Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here for our exciting Modern Minds program. Tonight's program is organized by the Friends of Israel Committee under the chairmanship of member Mark Rohatner. So what's the Friends of Israel Committee? So I know that there's a number of members of the committee that are here tonight. But for those who are not aware, let me tell you what the committee is. Maybe by taking a step back, which is that one way for us to really make a difference for the United States, but also for Israel, is by getting involved in the political process. And one great way to participate in a meaningful way in the political process is by joining our Friends of Israel Committee. And what the committee does is they organize four or five events at private homes during the course of the year where they host senators and members of Congress. And it's a great opportunity to have meaningful conversation in an intimate ambiance, to meet and greet the members of Congress and the senators, and also to show our gratitude for those who have supported Israel in a profound way. So it's a time to really give them chizuk and strength to continue doing what they're doing, but to show those members of Congress that really our community cares deeply about the welfare of Israel. There is a financial commitment to be part of the committee, but it's really a great investment because when you come to these events, they're at private homes. It's fun, it's social, it's interesting, and again, it's a really great way to support something that's so dear and so near to our hearts, which is the state of Israel, but also the shared interests and values between the United States and Israel. So if you have any interest to get involved, perhaps, if you have any interest, I was going to ask for a raise of hands since he was on the committee, but there are a number of people here on the committee. If this is interesting to you, and I hope it is, to get involved in the political process, please see Mark Rohatner, who's over here. Mark, you want to raise your hand? Mark Rohatner or myself, and we'll give you all the information. Thank you so much. Okay, now for tonight's program. Tonight gives us an opportunity to hear from an expert, but also to thank one of Israel's strongest supporters in Congress. Congressman Eliot Engel. Represents New York's 16th Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. He has served as the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, very influential Foreign Affairs Committee, since 2013. He's known for his bipartisan approach, for his unifying message, and he's worked hard to ensure that even in times of political dysfunction, often, and partisanship, support of Israel in Congress is truly unwavering. So, for example, in July 2014, the Congressman wrote and helped usher through Congress the Emergency Iron Dome Replenishment Act, which increased American support for Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Most recently, Congressman Engel led 367 of his colleagues in a bipartisan letter to President Obama, urging him to foreclose any pathway to an Iranian nuclear bomb. So thank you for that. Congressman Engel, we are deeply appreciative for you being here tonight, but also for your courageous leadership, standing up for the truth, and for the shared interests and values of the United States and Israel. It's an honor for us to host you. Please welcome and let me introduce Congressman Eliot Engel.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, and welcome. Thank you for coming here. I must tell you that when someone gives me such a wonderful introduction like this, I always wish two of the women in my life could be here to hear it. My late mother and my wife. And I want you to know, Rabbi, that my wonderful, beloved mother would have believed every wonderful thing you said about her. My wife, she would ask you who you were talking about. Only kidding, only kidding. It's great to be here in California. It's great to be in Los Angeles where I have so many friends. My friend Stanley, here, Stanley Tritel, and it's always a pleasure to see the community here strong and vibrant, standing up for Israel. It's kind of what I do in Washington, and like to know that people around the country are rallying together, because the U.S.-Israel relationship is important and strong, and you don't have to be Jewish to love Israel. Everyone should love Israel because it's the only democracy in the Middle East. I want to thank Rabbi Tapp, Rabbi Posey, Mark Hatner, and everyone else who organized this. This is very important that we get to do this. I want to bring you some good news, because we hear so much bad news. The good news is that in Washington, support for Israel is strong and it's bipartisan. And that's the way it should be. Doesn't mean there aren't rotten apples out there, but it means by and large, when I had my Iron Dome replenishment legislation, Rabbi just talked about, we have 435 members of the House. It passed with only 8 negative votes out of 435. I mean, that shows strong bipartisan support. When we had a resolution in the days of the Gaza war on the floor of the House of Congress condemning Hamas for using its people as human shields, it passed unanimously. And those things are important. When we had a bill, myself and Congressman Royce of California, he's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And the way that works is that each party picks its leader on each committee. The majority party's leader becomes the chair, and the minority party's leader becomes ranking member. And so I've been ranking member of the committee since Howard Berman, who was from Los Angeles, was defeated in Congress, and I replaced him as the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And Ed Royce and I, back in 2013, put together legislation which had the most crippling effects on Iran, Iran sanctions bill. It passed unanimously out of the Foreign Affairs Committee and passed the floor of the House 400 to 20. And just the other day, about a week or so ago, we had the legislation on the Iranian talks come over from the Senate, the Senator Corker's bill. And it passed the House and Congress with only 20 negative votes, or 400 and something positive votes. So there's a lot to be thankful for. And support for Israel is bipartisan because of a number of reasons. First of all, it's the right side of the issue. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel aligns itself with the United States. We have common goals. It's not a one-way street in the relationship where the United States gives money and Israel takes. You look at the United Nations votes, Israel is always with the United States of America. You look at all things around the world, Israel is with the United States of America. Israel has been a reliable and strong ally in all the things we say we believe. So do the people of Israel believe. Believe in democracy, believe in human rights, believe in all the things that Americans believe in as well. So that's why I say you don't have to be Jewish to love Israel, although as Jews we feel a certain kinship and importance to have a Jewish homeland for how many thousands of years. And now we have a Jewish homeland. And we all want to make sure that that homeland remains strong. And that's why I never play politics as far as Israel is concerned. I call it the way I see it. I don't care if it's a Democratic president or a Republican president, or a Democratic House or a Republican House. When it comes to Israel, and it comes to each issue involving Israel, I call it the way I see it. And that's why I'm known as a person who reaches across the aisle and works, I'm a Democrat, who works with the Republicans to protect Israel. The chairman, as I mentioned before, of our committee, Ed Royce, he's a Republican. He and I work very, very closely together, on all this legislation, because I believe and he believes that foreign policy, where possible, should be bipartisan. If there's one thing that should be bipartisan, it's foreign policy. Because as Americans, you know, in my city, in New York, when On September 11, 2001, when the terrorists killed 2,000 people, they didn't care if people were Democrats or Republicans or Jewish or Christian or white or black or Latino. It didn't matter. They just wanted to kill all of us. They wanted to kill Americans. And so that's why I think it's important that everybody work together and everybody understands that Israel and the United States are unshakable, the alliance, and unbreakable. Now, there are going to be tensions from time to time, and we've all heard about the recent tensions. We all know and we all understand it. And much has been written about the fact that President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu don't like each other. I think that's not a secret. I'm not revealing anything that you don't already know. But you want to know something? I really couldn't care less about whether they like each other. You know why? Because presidents come and presidents go. Prime ministers come, prime ministers go. Members of the Knesset come and go, members of the United States Senate come and go, members of the House of Representatives come and go, although I don't want to go so quickly. But the U.S.-Israel relationship is what counts. The enduring bond between the U.S. and Israel should be stronger than any person who happens to occupy the White House or the Knesset in Jerusalem. That's what's important. That if there is a blip, if there is a problem, if there is a temporary disagreement on an issue or two or more serious, I don't mean to sweep anything under the rug, because people that know me know that I don't sweep it under the rug. But I don't want to overstate it either. I believe that the United States will always stand by Israel, and I believe that Israel will always stand by the United States. I think it's as simple as that. And I think, again, it's not only because of the Jewish community, and let me tell you, it's important that the pro-Israel community, Jews and non-Jews alike, put their money where their mouth is. Go to Washington. Let people know that there's political power and there's political clout, and that people in the community are looking and watching to see how their representatives are voting, to see who stands with Israel, to see who plays politics. That's very important. You know, I have been in Congress now 27 years, and I have attended 28 consecutive conventions from AIPAC, policy conferences in the spring. The reason why it's one more than the number of years I'm in Congress is because when I was running for Congress, that was my first AIPAC policy conference. And I'll never forget, they called up, it was the first time that I heard my name called out with the district next to it. I said, wow, that sounds good if I can only get elected. And they did. And I've gone there each and every time. And I really believe that nobody works closer with AIPAC than I do, because I believe in that organization. And I believe that that organization not only cares about what's good for Israel, they care about what's good for America. And the alliance, again, between Israel and the United States is strong and is very, very important. And when people come to Washington in large numbers, it's taken into account. People understand that there's clout. People understand that there's a price to pay. Look, it's a lobbying effort like anything else. And people understand that the pro-Israel community, Jewish Americans and others, care very much about Israel and are going to put their money where their mouth is, are going to put their votes where their mouth is, are going to do what is necessary to do. And that's really the way it should be. And that's why I will reach across the aisle and work with anyone and everyone who works with me to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, to strengthen the fact that Israel is vibrant and must remain so, regardless of the fact that there will be disagreements from time to time. I mean, if you think of your own family, your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents, I mean, families disagree from time to time. Sometimes those disagreements are a little bit nasty, although we hope not. But I look at the relationship between the U.S. and Israel as family, and sometimes there'll be disagreements, but we have to move on. And that's why, again, I think it's so important that people like yourselves remain involved and stay involved. I want to talk a bit about Iran, because June 30th is rapidly approaching. And on June 30th, there will either be an agreement with Iran and the P5+1, or there won't be. I happen to believe there will be. I've always thought there would be, even when the President and the Secretary of State have said to me that they think it's less than 50-50, that there'll be an agreement. I always believed that there would be an agreement. look, it's a pretty grim picture. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a pretty grim picture. I'm going to talk the truth. Emet. I'll tell you the truth. We should have, in my opinion, moved on Iran's nuclear program decades ago, or at least 1 decade ago. Now Iran is really at the 11th hour. You know, they're 98 or 99% there, and they're marching on to having a nuclear weapon. They claimed initially that it was for peaceful purposes. They're a bunch of liars, we know it. There's no other word to use. They're liars. And of course they want to build a bomb. And of course when the previous president, Ahmadinejad, who was a real lowlife, but at least he told the truth. He said they want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. They weren't lying. And if we think they're lying, then we're naive or fools. But we have to assume they mean what they say, and that's why, again, it's so important for all of us to be activists and for all of us to push. But the fact of the matter is that 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 4 years ago, Iran was a lot weaker than it is now, a lot further away from breaking out to having a nuclear bomb. And we could have easily had strikes on their nuclear facilities, and they would have been wiped out. The problem you have now is there's really only 2 alternatives. One is to sign an agreement and hope it's a good agreement and monitor it and hope that it works. I'll talk about that in a minute. The alternative to that would be to bomb Iran, bomb their nuclear facilities, and then slap sanctions on them again. Those are realistically your 2 alternatives. Now, neither one is particularly palatable, to tell you the truth, because I think an agreement that's signed with Iran has to have safeguards. I'll tell you in a minute what I think has to be in it, and I don't trust them. You can't trust a bunch of liars who have shown in the past that their word means nothing. On the other hand, we have to really think long and hard before we bomb facilities and slap more sanctions. We can do that. I'm always for more sanctions on rogue regimes, but you don't just bomb them and think that that's the end of it, because they have their puppets, Hezbollah, totally funded by Iran, and in Beirut, and just waiting to strike the civilian populations of Israel. So we have to take that into consideration as well. And so, for me, what it'll boil down to is what's in the plan, what's in the agreement. There's an agreement. I believe that we cannot want an agreement more than the Iranians. I don't believe we should cave in at the last minute and give into things because we want an agreement. I think we need to stick to our guns, and they need to cave. And if they don't cave, then we need to tell the international community that we continue to slap on sanctions. The problem you have, quite frankly, is the international community. Remember, it's P5 plus 1. It's the permanent 5 members of the Security Council plus Germany. So you've got that paragon of virtue, Russia, the other paragon of virtue, China. Then you have the UK, France, the United States, and Germany. So it means that those countries would all have to agree on maintaining sanctions. I don't know if you can get them to agree. So, you know, it's not black and white. It's really kind of shades of gray. But here's what I think really needs to be in an agreement. First of all, I want to tell you, the whole premise of these negotiations bothers me. Not that I think it's bad to negotiate, because I think that it is good to negotiate. But here's what bothers me. From day one, when the negotiations opened up, there had been 6 United Nations Security Council resolutions calling on Iran to stop enriching uranium, to stop enriching, to stop those centrifuges from spinning. And they ignored it. So we then sit down and negotiate with Iran a year and a half ago, and we don't make it a prerequisite of sitting and talking to them that they stop spinning. I don't understand why we could not have said to them, while we're talking, you stop spinning. And if you're not going to stop spinning, what's it all about? I was told that the reason we didn't do it is because they wouldn't agree to it, and then there wouldn't be talks, and then, you know, the whole thing would be thrown out the window. I said, well, what does that tell you? What does it tell you about their intentions? If their intentions are bad, who wants to talk with them? So that part bothered me, that they continued to spin while we were negotiating. The other thing that bothered me is we're talking to Iran about their nuclear program, period. Now, the nuclear program, of course, is important, very important. And President Obama has said, and he's right when he says, you're better off containing Iran if they don't have nuclear weapons than if they have nuclear weapons. But the fact of the matter is, we are sitting and negotiating with Iran now, have 30 more days or so to come up with an agreement, and we're talking to them about nuclear weapons, period. We're not talking about them, about their support for international terrorism, the fact that they are the #1 country funding terrorism, the fact that they fund Hamas, the fact that they fund Hezbollah, the fact that Hezbollah is winning the war for Assad in Syria. It's not the Syrian Assad troops that are winning that war that have the upper hand now. It's the Hezbollah fighters that Iran used to go into Syria to prop up Iran's puppet Assad, who has murdered 200,000 of his own people and displaced God only knows how many people, more than 1 million. And we're not talking to Iran about that. Iran goes starts moving towards Yemen in defiance of the United States position, and we're talking to them about their nuclear weapons. They imprison Americans, and they put the chief of the Washington Post Tehran Bureau on trial, I think starting this week or next week. Today. And we're talking to them about nuclear weapons. I mean, it's ludicrous, in my opinion, why we can't talk to them about everything. And why we can't say to them, well, if you're going to continue to fund terrorism, we don't really want to make a deal with you because we don't trust you. Why don't we talk about everything? That's what bothers me. So here we are, and there's 30 days left. And for me, here's what I'm looking for in this agreement. Number one, I want to make sure that if we say we're going to have an agreement and we're going to prevent them from marching forward, because the argument goes, and there's validity to this argument, that Iran keeps moving closer and closer and closer to a bomb. Now they're only about 2 or 3 months away. If we do nothing, in 3 months they'll have a bomb. And once they have a bomb, it's almost all over. They're a nuclear power, and then all these other countries in the region will want to have nuclear weapons as well. And so, it seems to me that what we need to look at this agreement, we need to look at the inspections. And we need to make sure that these international inspectors that are so highly touted by people who are supporting this, have free access to go anywhere in Iran they want to go. Free access, not by announcing it to the Iranians, and the Iranians will give permission 2 weeks later after they've hidden everything, but announcing it to the Iranians, and by not announcing it to the Iranians, and being able to go every place, including military bases. I want to see that in the final agreement. The other thing I want to see in the final agreement is I want to see the removal of sanctions gradually, only after Iran complies with things that it's supposed to do. They've been telling their people that the minute this agreement is signed, sanctions are going to be removed. That's unacceptable to me. If they are improving, if they are doing certain things, and we want to remove some of the sanctions a little bit at a time, as they move, based on their behavior, that's a reasonable thing. But if they think they're going to have sanctions removed just because they sign an agreement that they may or may not fulfill, and if you have any belief in what their past record shows, then you have grave doubts about whether they'll fulfill it, that's what I want to see in an agreement. What I don't want to see is the United States wanting an agreement more than Iran wants an agreement. So that at the end, it won't be the Iranians won't be the ones that cave in. It would be the United States. That to me would be unacceptable. So I have held my power, saying that I'll see what our negotiators, who are trying their best, who are doing a good job. You're dealing with what you're dealing with. They're trying their best, but for me the proof is really in the pudding. And there is a bill before Congress which was passed, Senator Corker's bill, passed both houses. It's now the law. The president signed it. And it means that Congress has to vote on any agreement that is agreed upon by Iran and the United States. If the Congress should vote against it and reject it, the president can then veto it, and then you would need a 2/3 vote in both the Senate and the House of Representatives in order to overturn that. And that's really where we're at now. The truth is that there are really no good alternatives. There are no good alternatives. And we shouldn't lightly talk about bombing Iran or whatever, because we need to be careful. You know, we intervened in Iraq. And you know, I'm just as much to blame as anybody else. I voted for that war. I was one of the few Democrats that broke with the majority of my party and voted for the Iraq war. I did so because I thought it would bring stability. I did so because I thought it was good for the United States, good for Israel, good for our allies in the region. But what we did when we blew up Iraq, we made Iran the hegemonic power in the region, because Iraq had been Iran's enemy. And once we blew it up and got rid of Saddam Hussein, the majority Shias in Iraq aligned with the majority Shias in Iran. And that's why we've had a lot of trouble since then, because the regime in Baghdad has been so pro-Iranian and against the Sunnis. This is where the ISIS marched in. And by the way, let me briefly talk about that. I think we missed the boat 3 years ago. I put in a bill which would have given the president the authority, which he didn't really need, he really hasn't, to aid the Free Syria Army, the well-vetted, freedom-fighting Syrian rebels in Syria. I think 3 years ago they were a viable force, and if we had helped them, I believe, I can't prove it, just what I believe, that we could have seen a different path in Syria. But what happened is, once we didn't help them, they withered on the vine, and ISIS moved into the vacuum to sort of show the Sunnis a counter to Assad and the others. And so we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place, because ISIS is awful and they need to be defeated at all costs, but Assad is awful as well, and the people in Syria are the ones who are suffering. And I think that things could have been better. Well, when you talk about foreign policy, hindsight's always 20/20, but I think things could have been handled a lot better. And finally, let me talk about the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, or lack of peace process. I personally believe in a two-state solution. I do, not because I think it's good for Palestinians, because I think it's good for Israelis. I think that if there's no two-state solution, and there's a one-state solution in essence, that demographics will eventually mean that Jews will become a minority in that one state. And I think that's a problem down the road. That's my personal belief. But you know what? Israelis choose their leaders. And all the people who didn't like Netanyahu, well, Israel gets to choose. Americans don't get to choose. We choose our leaders, they choose their leaders. Sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes they make mistakes, sometimes whatever, but they choose their leaders. And we have to respect that. And I think the way you get peace between Arabs, Palestinians, and Israelis is a country like the United States needs to stick behind Israel and let them know that we will never abandon our ally Israel. You know, I always have to chuckle when Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, the head of the West Bank, talks. He's in the 8th year of his 4-year term. So no lectures do we need from the Palestinians about democracy. And of course, when you take the alternative, the terrorist group, Hamas, running Gaza, well, you don't really have leadership right now with which you can really negotiate. Let's hope down the line we can find it. And let's hope down the line there can one day be peace in the region. But you know, the time, years ago, we'd be sitting here. I mean, one good thing I'd like to leave you with, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you have. we look at the situation and we say, well, you know, it's terrible, it's bad, looks like its enemies are all ganging up, it's a terrible situation. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? The truth is that 20 years ago, if we were all here, we'd be saying the same thing. And somehow, miraculously, Israel has survived, and not only survived, but thrived. And I believe that Israel will continue to survive and thrive, and I believe it will continue to do that with strong bipartisan support for the United States. And I would just say to people that, you know, when it comes to supporting people that run for office, support for Israel is a very strong piece of a puzzle. I think that many people in this room care about, as well we should. And so we need to keep working on keeping support for Israel bipartisan. We need to keep working and having our friends. You know, there were only 20 Jews in the U.S. House of Representatives. So I'm 1/20th. There are 435 members. So it means we rely on a lot of our very good friends in both parties, who are not Jewish, to strongly support Israel. And they support Israel because they understand, as I said before, Israel shares our values. They understand the pro-Israel community is very active. And they understand that it's the right thing to do. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank all of you for caring and participating and being active. I always love coming to LA. I always feel that LA is almost like a second or third or fourth home. It's certainly lots of friends here and lots of good people here. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Congressman Engel, for your words and for your leadership. So we'll take some questions. A few questions, yes. No.
Congressman, first of all, thank you for being a friend of Israel. Oh, sorry about that. First of all, thank you for being a friend of Israel. A friend of Israel is a friend of Beth Jacobs and a friend of all of ours, and we're delighted. Secondly, you're obviously aware of the China comment over the last couple of days that if America doesn't stop interfering in the South Sea issue, they'll have no choice but to declare war on the United States. Now, I want to ask you who you think is likely to blink firstly when that comes about, and the implications on that for Iran, which I think are quite profound. And secondly, with respect to the two-state solution, given that I think everybody or many people would like a so-called two-state solution, do you have any methodology by which that could realistically be achieved? Is there any game plan that you would advocate in the current situation to achieve such a situation? And if not, are you willing to articulate the fact that it may not be feasible at the current time and may be a dream that needs to be shelved until it may be appropriate and practical?
Wow. Let me answer, I'll answer both questions. On China. China is, our main fight is against Islamic terrorism. That's our main fight in the world. I think September 11, 2001 opened our eyes. We may have thought at one point that we were protected by the Atlantic and the Pacific, and then we realized we weren't so protected. So I think that changed our outlook. But our real adversary, I don't say enemy, but adversary in the world, has for a long time now, in my opinion, has been China. China is building up its military. China is becoming ever more belligerent in the South China Sea. It's the reason why former enemies of ours, like Vietnam, want to align with the United States and not with China. And those of you like me who lived through the Vietnam War find it really a bit surprising that Vietnam would want to work with the United States over China. It's one of the reasons that the president gives for wanting this free trade agreement, because Vietnam is one of those countries. And so I think that that's something that's going to take a great deal of our time. Now, China is one of the P5+1 countries. I'm told by the negotiators, our negotiators, that China's been cooperative, that there has not been a problem from either China or Russia strangely enough, in terms of confronting Iran. Whether that will last after there's an agreement or no agreement or whatever, I don't know. But China is certainly a country that we need to monitor closely and devote more time, because we have a lot of allies in that region as well. You know, we have Japan, and we have South Korea, and Taiwan, Philippines. Vietnam is not quite an ally, but they'd like to be. And so I think that they're watching. You know, they're watching what goes on in Iran. Look, I happen to think that all the countries watch American resolve. I think they watch American resolve. That's why I think it's important for us to be strong. That's why I think it's important for us to take a country, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to tie it in, the troubles in Ukraine. I believe we should be supplying Ukraine with defensive weapons. They're not asking us for soldiers. They're asking us for weapons to defend themselves. And I think we need to show strength. I really do. Because I think countries like China watch, and certainly countries like Iran watch. In terms of a two-state solution, look, I was asked this question. I spoke to a group about, maybe it was 2/3 of the crowd here, or maybe half the crowd here. They were the EU ambassadors to Washington, to the EU. They were ambassadors to the EU, I'm sorry, from all the EU countries, and they were in Washington, and I spoke to them just the way I'm speaking to you. And one of them asked me, it was either the Danish or the Dutch, asked me about Israel, and asked me about, what did I think about getting a two-state solution, and what did I think about negotiations. And I said I was for a two-state solution, but that the two-state solution, in my opinion, can only come about through direct negotiations between the parties concerned. That there couldn't be a two-state solution or any solution imposed by an outside group, imposed by the United Nations, imposed by whatever organization. Because we all know that any time you get that kind of imposition, it's against Israel. Israel can't get a fair shake in the UN or the so-called Human Rights Council in the UN. It's a joke. And so I believe that the only way you can have any kind of solution, albeit a two-state solution, is direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, in terms of deferring it, look, there's almost no one to talk to now. I don't know who Israel would talk to now. You're not going to talk to Hamas. They're a terrorist organization. Abu Mazen is so weak. As I said, he's on the 8th year of his 4-year term. He's really not a viable partner to talk to. So I think by what's left is a deference. I just don't think there's anyone to talk to now. But my own belief would be a deference. We got to be careful with the deference, I think, because I don't think a deference can be permanent. I don't think that you get stability ultimately if it's a permanent deference. But right now there has to be a deference because there's no one to talk to. I hope that will change.
Other people texted in questions to that number, and Sunita is going to ask the question.
Congressman, Iran has been a thorn in the side of the U.S. since 1979. Yet we've always treated them with kid gloves. My question is, does Iran have well-placed sleeper cells in the U.S. that are poised to attack Americans if Iran is attacked? Is that why every American president has avoided military attacks against Iran?
Well, my answer would just be speculation, because I don't know for a fact about Iranian terror cells. I don't know. I hope not. It might be. I don't know. Look, there's plenty of blame to go around for not confronting Iran. I mean, there's from Jimmy Carter on down. From Jimmy Carter on down. Even George W. Bush, who, I disagreed with him a lot on domestic policy, but on Israel he was superb. Even he didn't do what he should have done. When we were hearing in his 7th year of his administration that he was going to bomb the Iranian nuclear facility, instead a bogus report came out from our intelligence community saying that Iran had stopped pursuing a nuclear weapon and was no longer actively pursuing pursuing it. And so he pulled back. It was the 7th year of his term. I remember having a discussion with Connie Rice about it. And she denied it, but we all kind of knew what was really going on. So there's plenty of blame to go around. I don't know, I can't answer it, I don't understand it, but from Jimmy Carter on down, we haven't handled it under both Democratic and Republican administrations the way we should have. And now, I mean, look, I give President Obama credit for one thing. He's negotiating and trying to prevent Iran from breakout. I mean, we may not like what he's negotiating, we may not like the agreement he negotiates. There are things that I have questions, I told you about all the questions, but the fact is he's the first president to sit and try to negotiate with Iran. I don't know why we didn't try to do that when we had a stronger hand.
I have another one that I got by text. From a practical perspective, if Congress votes against the Iran negotiated terms and the President vetoes it, do we have the 2/3 vetoes to override the veto? Do we have the 2/3 votes in Congress?
Well, I don't think we know, because I think the 2/3 would be determined by what's in the agreement. I mean, I am not committed one way or another. For me, the proof is in the pudding, the devil is in the details. If I think it's a bad agreement, I'm going to vote, I'll be part of the 2/3 to vote to override it. If I think it's a decent agreement, I may not like everything in it, but if I think on balance it's better than not having an agreement, then I won't vote for it. I think we have to see. But I have made no commitment to anybody to vote for an agreement or vote against it. And I think it's going to be a lot of soul searching, because it's not going to be black and white. It's going to be all kinds of shades of gray, and it's going to be a very, very difficult decision. And again, it would have been a lot better if we had handled this years ago, and we could have and should have. But you know, woulda, shoulda, and coulda. You can't cry over spilled milk. We got to just deal with what we have now. We have to kind of see. But I want to tell you, if we came in the last minute on certain things, I'm not going to vote for the agreement. If we think it's something that prevents what's worse, that's Iran getting a bomb, then it's something that I probably would vote for. I have to see. Yes.
Congressman, President Obama, to get back to your first point, his criticisms and disagreements with Netanyahu, has been saying that Israel has to stop building settlements and other complaints he has. Do you think that it's in Israel's interest to listen to President Obama because he has Israel's interests?
Look, you know something? When President Obama, and look, let me tell you something. Obama has done some good, some of you may disagree with me. Obama has done some good things vis-a-vis Israel, and he's done some bad things vis-a-vis Israel. You know, the good things is we talk about Iron Dome, we passed this resolution. He put his money where his mouth is for Iron Dome. He personally made sure that Iron Dome went forward, personally made sure that there was money, American funded, personally handled that. There were times in the United Nations where we blocked the Palestinians from getting a toehold into various organizations in the UN. He did that. There were times we threw vetoes, American vetoes, blocking biased resolutions. He did that. So there were things that he's done. But there are other things that he's done that, you know, I disagree. He has said that he thought that settlements were the biggest obstacles to peace. Well, you know, settlements are not the biggest obstacles to peace. The biggest obstacle to peace is the fact that it's now been 67 years since the creation of the Jewish state, and the Arabs still do not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. If your adversaries won't recognize your right to exist, I don't see how you can have peace with them. That's the biggest obstacle to peace. You know, I disagree with a lot of the stuff that's said, and I call it the way I see it.
Okay, Bevly with the last question. Sorry we can't get everyone's questions. Bevly.
You said about presidents come and go and prime ministers come and go, but it's an unshakable bond between Israel and the United States. Stand up. You said presidents come and go and prime ministers come and go, but it's an unshakable bond between Israel and the United States. First of all, when you have a president who says a lot of negative things about the last time the President said that he would not block a UN resolution about Palestinian statehood on their own. So that goes beyond friends and not friends.
Well, let me say that the statement about not blocking resolutions in the United Nations was upsetting to me. And there were a group of us, frankly, Jewish members of Congress, that went into the West Wing of the White House and let the administration know that we were very angry and upset with that statement. So, you know, we have been there, and when we think things are egregious, we open our mouths. And let's see. So far it's been talk. Let's see the next time a resolution comes forward. If there's a resolution that comes forward and we veto it, if it's a biased resolution and we veto it, I will go on the House floor and praise the President for vetoing it. If it's a biased resolution against Israel and we don't veto it, we just abstain and therefore it passes, I will go on the House floor and condemn the fact that the United States didn't veto it. So I'm keeping my eyes and ears open, and I call it the way I see it.